Well, hello everybody. Justin Bell here on Life with Legends. I've been so fortunate to meet many extraordinary people over the years, but there are some that really do inspire you. And Bruce Meyer is one of those true gentlemen that I am just blessed to call a friend. Often called the unofficial mayor of Beverly Hills, Bruce seems to know just about everybody, and they in turn adore him back. People gravitate to his engaging demeanor, and I think it's not just me that wishes they could come back as him in the next life. His extraordinary car collection is secretly located just feet, literally above the visiting tourists, and yet to any of us in the car world, it's a place for us to meet and enjoy some of the most beautiful cars ever built. But I'm always intrigued on how do people achieve this level of success? What was their motivation? How, in fact, did they pull it off? I knew so little of his journey, and yet sitting down in his garage was going to be a real treat, and learning the whole story in the end makes him even more impressive. A true car guy and the perfect role model. I hope you enjoy it. Well, Bruce, thank you for having me back in the garage. You know, it was a good. Last time I was here was at Dawn, obviously, and you made a cameo at that point, which people liked. And then I was TK and I did a podcast with these guys on Friday, actually, and they went, "Oh, have you ever talked to Bruce Meyer?" And I was going, "God, he's been sitting right in front of me the whole time, and I've always meant to." So thank you. Thanks.
Well, it's a privilege having you here, for sure.
Well, you know, it's, as I say, when I come back, I'm coming back as you. And I know I let your wife know that on your birthday, right?
That birthday greeting that you did was epic. I mean, I had some nice remarks from friends, but yours just, I don't know, just resonated with me. You said, I'm coming back, and my collection is going to be, you know, not 1/18th, but
I can fit on that. Yeah, my goal is that my car collection doesn't sit on the shelf behind me.
That's right. Exactly.
I know. Well, that's it. You know, it's like we sit here surrounded by all these cars, and I always describe and it's not, today's not, it's about you, it's about your cars, it's about life, but I always describe it, your collection as though you went sniper hunting, right? You're a sniper with your cars. There are people that are shotgun collectors, right? They fire in the general direction and they seem to have an awful lot of cars. Would you agree that pretty much every car in here has the right story for you and fits you and is a part of your passion, and must have been some very hard to get and some you've had for a long time? Is that how you describe it? Because it seems like it was so particular.
You know, I've really never thought of it in that term as like a sniper, but you're absolutely right. So this is 50 years of one car a year. And the 4Cam there I've had for 53 years. I've been fortunate not to sell anything.
Yeah.
And when I bought the 4Cam in 1970, I had the opportunity, I paid a little over $10,000 for that car, and a GTO was a little over $8,000. I mean, had I been Alan DeCadney or somebody that really knew his stuff, I would have a GTO now. I could have been a real contender.
A real contender.
But because I just haven't sold anything, and I've had some offers on cars, but you know, I'm very attached to what I buy, because I don't, like you say, they're targeted purchases that mean a lot to me at the time. And I've just kept them and enjoyed them. And I don't have any idea what the values are, and I don't want to know what the values are. That's never been what it's about for me.
It would probably ruin it a bit. I mean, Nick Mason said that about his he's got his GTO, hasn't he? Which I raced, I remember, 25 years ago. The Coys, when it was called the Coys Festival at Silverstone.
Right, Coys.
But he said, well, suddenly it got to be worth like $50 million. And he said it kind of takes the fun out of driving it around the country lanes, because everybody knows how valuable it is, including him.
Well, a GTO is that way. And I have my short wheelbase that I've had for 22 years. That was my 60th birthday present to myself. And I remember I was actually with Chip Connor. We were at his home in France, or France.
Yeah.
And Octane magazine had just kind of come out, and I remember reading like the first couple issues, and Adrian Hamilton had an ad for a short wheelbase, and I'd always loved the short wheelbase. To me, I like the short wheelbase better than the GTO. It just works for me. And this car that I have now was actually not the advertised car, but he had a red street car advertised. And so I said to Chip, when we get back to the UK, I'd love to go see this car. And Chip said, sure. So we went over there, and he had 3 short wheelbases. He had this one, which belonged to Greg Whitten, Microsoft. Yeah. He had a beautiful street car, a red one with black. And then he had one that belonged to some particular rock star. I forget who it was, but it was a rebodied car. And that didn't appeal to me. So the car I have now is like twice what the street car was. And I thought, you know what? This is my 60th. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
And to this day, that's the most expensive car I've ever purchased. But I took it on the Colorado Grand. I drive it around and I use it. I still do. But like now, the value is, like you say, it gets to a point where maybe you're not so smart driving it around, but I still do.
Well, you have to, right?
I have to.
But look at you when you got. We were here, everybody, it seemed to only the other day, 4 months ago, when Dr. Porsche was in town, and you bought that Brumos car and you just restored it and you showed it to us all for the first time. And the joy in your face, you were like the little boy that obviously I never knew, but you were the little boy who just got the car of his dreams, another car of his dreams. Talk me through that, because special car, but just really exaggerates or showcases your passion.
Yeah, I think that's a very special car to me, because I've loved Porsches since 1961 when I bought my first Porsche. But that car really resonated with me. But almost every car I have, I get very excited about, and I buy it for a purpose, and I love it to death. And I have friends that have a lot more cars and a lot more expensive cars. And as soon as they consummate, buying a car, they're like, on to the next one. I'm not that way. Tom, who works with me here, he's heard me say it so many times. I said, well, that's it. We're done. I can't think of another car. And then something happens, like that Brumos car. Yeah. That was just serendipity.
Or the Pizzerini before it. All the...
Right. Yeah. It kind of, I'm not looking for anything. I'll find something, and, I'll look at different, advertisements or magazines and think, do I need that car? No. Or do I want that car? Nice, but I wouldn't do it justice, and it just wouldn't work for me. But so every car in here has a story and a reason why I bought it, and it's special to me.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, just checking the light there.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's what's so beautiful about sitting here. But tell me about the boy what was the teenage Bruce like?
Well,
where were you? I know nothing about.
Okay.
It's like you're the most handsome, lovely alien that dropped from the sky. Because I only moved to America. When I moved to California, that's when I got to know you.
Yeah.
12 years ago.
Sure.
So, where did it all start?
Yeah. Well, I grew up here in L.A., Hollywood, California. Nice, middle class. We didn't really have any excess money, and it was. Money was tight. My parents had gone through the Depression, so they were mindful of, that it could happen again. I went to Los Angeles High School, which is the school right in the center of L.A., very diverse. It was not I say I went east to school. It was in East L.A., which is not the best part of L.A.
You weren't going to Newport, Rhode Island.
No, I didn't go to Exeter or Andover or any of those fancy schools. So I went public school the whole way. And then I went to Berkeley. But, so if I wanted something, I had to earn it. I had to make the money. And my parents really didn't understand the car thing at all.
And that was already there, even at a young age, the car thing.
From birth, I think.
Really?
Yeah. You can't take it out of me. And I have 3 children. Evan, my middle son. It's he's got that gene. That you just love cars. Yeah. And more than cars, I probably love the people of the hobby more than anything. Cars are nice, but sharing them and being with the great
we'll come to that, because I think that's a big part of it. But I was just thinking, What was the first car you remember on the streets of LA going, I'll be that one day. I'll have one of those?
Well, so I went to school at a primary school right across the street from the Art Center School, and which was right in LA at the time. Yeah. And they had a driveway that paralleled our play yard. And the Art Center was known for automotive design, so a lot of the early hot rodders and designers, went to Art Center School. I'm sure, Peter Brock or some of the
they did.
Yeah, and they were all hot rodders, and that's the way it started. So I just admired these cars. So I've always loved hot rods, and I forget what the question is.
No, which was the first car you can remember going?
The first car. So I always, I collect pictures of cars in magazines, and my parents couldn't get rid of the magazines quick enough. I mean, they would throw them away. They take the car pictures off my bulletin board, and you can't get interested in other stuff, and sports and so forth.
Out of it.
It was surf, cars, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
That was my generation, of the 40s and 50s, and so I always I love work more than play. My family gets a kick out of it, but I just do. So early on, I set bowling pins in a bowling alley. I had what I think was the best paper corner in Los Angeles. Really, I mean, it was on Highland Avenue, right in front of Pizza Mozza. You know where Pizza Mozza is? Yeah. And so this was the evening paper. And while the people were heading home in the evening, they would go right by. Everybody almost had to pass in front of my paper corner, and I made it known that I appreciated their buying the paper from me. So I was making $2 or $3 a day, which was big money back in the late 40s, early 50s. Well, it was early 50s, 52, 53. And so I knew the guys that were going to give me a quarter and let me keep the dime, and I knew the ones and I had a little change thing around my waist, ching, ching, like the bus drivers have. So that allowed me to save up money. And back then, you could buy a really cool car for $100. But I bought what was called a Doodlebug, which was a scooter with a little Briggs & Stratton engine. Yeah. I almost killed myself in that because it didn't have brakes and it was just too small. You could hurt yourself in that. So then I got a Whizzer. I kind of put together a Whizzer kind of, bits.
How old are you now?
12.
Oh, geez.
And then I bought a 53 BSA. Now, my parents, because of their oblivious, they didn't understand cars. They would never even imagine that their son would have a motorcycle. I mean, that was like Hell's Angel kind of time. And so they never even queried or what I did or with my money or anything. They just thought I was working hard and putting it away.
Did you park the bike around the corner then?
I parked it in friends' garages. And so I was, and back then I wanted with the tall bars, kind of the whole Hell's Angel look. So I had motorcycles at a very young age, and my parents didn't even know knew how to ride a motorcycle until really I got out of college. And Bill Harlan, my friend Bill Harlan. So we were fraternity brothers at Berkeley, and he was racing motorcycles. So that I wanted to be like Bill, so I started racing motorcycles. So back then it was called TT Scrambles, and we were racing matchless and big BSAs and stuff like that. So, and whenever I'd go to the UK, which I did when I graduated college, I would make sure I was somewhere near a motorcycle race on the weekends because I used to love it. They'd run in the dirt and they'd have it was a great. Anyway, so I grew up on motorcycles more than anything. I dated Raylene on a motorcycle.
What age were you when you met her?
I was 20. Let me see. I was 28.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe a little younger. And so I'd had Porsches, but I was kind of because this was like in 1968.
Yeah.
And Porsches in America in 68 were that wasn't a good year because you had to have a smog pump and they had these side lights. So I was between cars when I met Raylene, and so we just went everywhere on a motorcycle, which was fine by me because motorcycles I loved motorcycles as much as life.
No.
I thought if ever I have to stop riding a motorcycle, life isn't worth living, And now it just terrifies me to see people riding motorcycles.
Changed though, yeah.
Wow. So then so my first real car was when I went off to college. You go through the orientation lines when you go off to university, and one of the little stations was a student loan. So and my dad had given me tuition. I had to work for my room and for my food, and which was great because I had a hashing job and I worked in restaurants and that type of thing. Food was never a problem for me. I always got it.
Yeah.
But I discovered this line that would give you a tuition loan as long as you paid it back by the end of the year. Of course, I thought I'll take one of those. I already had the tuition, so I used my tuition money to buy a car, and I bought another motorcycle, and I bought a 50 Mercury. So the first car, you know what a 50 Mercury is? Kind of
visualize it.
Custom looking thing. It was kind of like James Dean and Rebel Without a Cause. It was a cool thing.
So you felt cool.
It was cool. And, I thought it was cool.
Yeah. But at the same time, by being here in California, the hot rod phenomena was all around you. You couldn't have, if you lived here, you couldn't, and you had an interest, you couldn't miss it. Am I correct?
You're 100% correct.
Yeah.
Now, so all the way through high school, I wanted hot rods.
Okay.
And then when I was in college, there were no hot rods, so I just, got by with my Mercury and my motorcycles. And then when I turned 20, so, I was a couple years into college, my dad thought it was time, and he always said, I'll help you buy your first car. And so I'd saved the money. I was buying half, and he was buying half. Yeah. And at the time, there was a Chevrolet came out with like a 409, 348 409, big engine. So I thought, I'm going to buy the cheap model. And my dad would appreciate that. It was called a Biscayne, which was the post. I mean, it had no anything on it, but I wanted the big motor and a 4-speed. Yeah. So, and my dad didn't know what you were doing. Had no idea. If 348, 409, 260, he didn't care. It just didn't matter. He didn't know, and he always had the very low horsepower. He didn't have anything great or new. He didn't, So in a way, that was good for me because he could not figure out what I was doing, nor did he care. He just figured I knew what I was doing. So at the time, I was ordering the Chevrolet, and up in Hollywood was John von Neumann, who was the Porsche and Ferrari distributor, had a shop called Competition Motors. Well, I'd ridden my bicycle by it, my motorcycle by it 100 times. Yeah. So I'd seen these little Porsches run around, and I kind of liked them. I thought they were cool, and they were, they were running speedsters at Pomona and Riverside, and so they had a little bit of a race image, and I liked that. So I thought I'm just going to check one of those out. So I did, and I found out I could buy a Porsche for $2,700 delivered in Europe. So I put together this scheme. It was a great scheme. Dad, I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to go to Europe, and I'm going to pick up a little compact car, Porsche.
Yeah, it's just a little. He didn't even know what a Porsche was.
No, 60 horsepower is what the low 60. So he was all on it. He just thought, now
my son's broadening his horizons.
Exactly. He's going to Europe. He's going to get some culture. Yeah. And meanwhile, I'm just thinking, just get me to that Porsche factory as fast as I can. So that was really my first real car was the Porsche in 1960. I bought it, I ordered it in 60, picked it up in 61 at the factory.
Is that you don't have that one?
No. And from then, I've been pretty much Porsche. When I graduated college, I took my Porsche up to Lake Tahoe, and I took a bartending job, and I discovered a gull wing there's a famous boat restorer in Tahoe called Sierra Tahoe Boat Company, and they did all the really beautiful wooden boats, and I've always loved wooden boats. Mm-hmm. So in the boathouse was this gull wing with a reverse trigger, like a reverse lockout, like a Corvette, and I'm going, oh my God, that's the perfect combination. A gull wing with a Chevy engine in it. So to make a long story short, I bought it, and I owned it for a year, and I sold it to Bill Harlan. I bought it in 64, sold it to him in 65, and he still has it with the Chevrolet engine. And that thing was wicked fast. So then I decided I should probably have a stock 300 SL, so I bought a Roadster, and then I went back.
What did you buy the Roadster for? How much was that?
Oh, I bought the Gullwing for $4,000.
Wow.
I think I sold it for probably $4,000.
Yeah.
And I think I probably paid $4,000 for the Roadster in 19, this would be in 64, 65, something like that. And I bought it from Hal Wallace, who was a movie producer.
Yeah.
I mean, a very low mileage, all original silver 300 SL with blue leather interior. I mean, it was all original. Because, listen, the car was only 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
And it was a 300 SL.
I mean, no one thought about keeping a car because you needed the money to buy the next car. And no one thought this is going to be worth a fortune in 20, 30, 50 years. It was like the GTOs. You just moved through them.
Right.
Alan owned 2 or 3 of them, I think, in his time, if not more. It was just what's the next thing?
Yeah. So and so then, I had the 300 SL, and then I bought in 60, I had it for probably a year maybe, and then I sold it to a friend. And by the way, if you could buy a car and sell it for what you had in it and have a cool car, I was good with that, because I always had, to my eye, something special, that I liked and was proud of. And it never, once I had my initial buy-in, you could sell it and buy another cool thing. And it wasn't like, friends of mine would buy a new Chevy for, $2,700, then sell it for $1,500, and then buy another one for, I just never did that. I just wanted to kind of at least stay even.
Yeah, buy those cars.
So then,
can I just jump back a second?
Yeah, sure.
Because I was just, when you went to college, was that when you first realized that, I don't know what you studied at college, but was that when you were thinking, I could have a different life to my dad?
Never. I never had that.
You never had that moment? Like,
it's funny. First of all, I went to college, but I don't even remember learning anything. It never got in the way of my education.
No.
I always worked. I always had jobs. My roommates would study night and day. I'd come home, they were studying. I never studied. I never made great grades, but I got through.
Yeah.
And I loved every minute of college. I was in a fraternity, which was just great. Again, Bill Harlan and I were fraternity brothers. We had a great house. And
it was the 60s.
This was 60s, yeah.
And there were a lot of pretty girls.
Oh, that is all that mattered.
Yeah. Cars and girls, probably.
Cars and motorcycles and girls, 100%. I'm serious. That's all that matters.
Well, I'm here because of that. I was born in 68, so,
I fortunately went to, Berkeley, which gave me some street cred because it's a good school. But, I never let it get in the way of what I wasn't doing. And my dad grew up like really dirt poor and was just a really a fine man and very principled and a good businessman. And he really wanted me to save my money and I guess I never thought I was going to have any means. I never thought I was going to have 2 cars. I never had any dreams about big. It never entered my mind. Even to this day, I don't even think, the number of cars or net worth, it's never a part of me. When I first started out, I guess I was most afraid of failure.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to disappoint my parents. They were amazing.
Yeah.
I'm my mother because she was a workaholic. She was the last one to bed at night, first up in the morning, made lists for everything. And she worked and worked and worked. And my dad was, he was a good businessman, honorable guy. He wouldn't be out front, like work in the community like I did.
You already knew you had the gift of the gab, right? You already knew.
I don't know if I knew it, but now
you hustled them on the paper stand.
Yeah.
So you must have had.
100%. And I had great jobs. I set bowling pins, and it was just an awful job, but I just enjoy working. I really like to work, and I feel it gives me purpose.
Yeah. So you came out of college,
right?
You were in real estate.
No, I wasn't in real estate then.
Oh, okay, you weren't.
No. So when I got out of college, again, women, rock and roll, and I just needed a job to
pay for all that.
And I had a friend of mine had rented an apartment up in Hollywood. In just a shit area of Hollywood, horrible. And needed a roommate, and so it was a duplex. So we ended up taking both sides of the duplex. So there were 4 bedrooms, and there were 4 of us jamokes. I would say the other 3 were way more serious than I was. They were, I never went to graduate school, but they were Stanford and Wharton grads, and working in the financial world. One had a bank, and the other 2 were stockbrokers, and they were pretty serious. I just wasn't. Again, I wasn't all that serious. I just wanted a bit of gas in my tank and just go have fun. And so that's kind of always been my thing. So when I graduated college and I went to work in Michigan, worked there I went to first Tahoe and was a bartender up there for about maybe a little less than a year. Then I went back to Michigan and worked for a department store chain back there. I had never experienced Michigan, and I'd met people, and it was the car capital kind of outside of LA, and I just thought it'd be cool. So I went back there and I worked for a year back there. Then I came back here in probably in 66, 67, something like that. And I opened a candle shop downstairs in this building. That was my first job, and my parents just thought I was crazy. Man, God, you're opening a what?
All that education?
A candle shop. And I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of me when I had my candle shop.
No.
It probably explains what I look like, and you'll get the picture real quick.
That's funny.
So anyway, so I opened a candle shop, and let me see, what am I doing here? So my parents literally thought I had just lost my mind.
I mean, I don't know if I'd run from that person or I would, I'd run from him or I'd buy a candle. I don't know.
Well, if
you look very 60s right
Oh,
now.
yeah. So anyway, so I had my candle shop, and I think I had decent taste, and I bought the right candles and artwork to go along with it, and we did rather well. And so then, when you're in your late 20s, it's about as smart as you'll ever be in your life.
Yeah.
There was a fellow named Roger Horchow who was a big mail order business maven. He ran Neiman Marcus mail order, and I thought, that looks like a good gig. So that's where we're here right now, is where I started my mail order business.
In here?
In here.
No.
Yeah. And it was, we had pallet racks. We didn't have a forklift, but we had all the crap up there. And so anyways, we started a mail order business. Then I outgrew it here, and we moved it to another place. And then I moved up here. Was all little offices and a lunchroom and, our accounting and so forth. So it was, things started going okay.
Yeah.
And then the man that owned this building took a liking to me and introduced me to the Rotary Club. I joined the Rotary Club in 1970, looking like that.
Yeah.
And then the chamber, and I got involved with the Chamber of Commerce. And so if I have a gift, I guess it's that of my love of people. I'm very comfortable, cultivating friendships.
Yeah, totally.
And that's what I did. I had a great following in my candle shop and a good following in the community.
But what everyone needs that guy to help him. It sounds like this guy was the guy that turned you into
my
Beverly
dad
Hills community.
Yeah. My dad thought this was the biggest waste of time. First of all, look at you. You don't fit into any part of this community. But this guy saw something.
Yeah.
And really, took me to the Rotary Club and the Chamber, and helped me get my foot in the door, and then also sold me this building. And I didn't know. I've never been much of a stock market guy. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And it takes an intellect, and you got to follow, and you got to know numbers. I never ran my real estate or my retail business by the numbers. I bought what I liked, and if it worked, we made money, and if we didn't, but we did okay. And so with regards to real estate, I bought a few buildings around town, and I had some partners, and they said, well, let me see the numbers, and what is your pro forma? And I go, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, we had to buy that building. What do you, I said, look, just trust me. We'll do this, and we'll paint that and put shutters here. And so I've always been one to just move out of passion. A friend of mine came into this garage and said, you had to just steal everything in here. I said, I don't think I paid market for anything in here. I paid over, because I just was, like you say, that I was targeted. I liked that item. I wanted that one. and I just paid what you had to pay. And the same in real estate. I bought the right buildings. I've been fortunate there. Rodeo Drive and Beverly Drive and Cannon. I just bought the right buildings, and the rest just kind of worked out.
And real estate, has it changed fundamentally from then to now, or is it still instinctive for you?
Oh, totally, yeah. And my son, who's in real estate, I think he liked, my life. My older son he's in the Foreign Service, and he lives abroad and speaks a bunch of languages, and he went to Berkeley and he learned languages and spent time at the International House, and he really got a fine education.
Yeah.
And so he's off doing his thing, and he was consul general in Kazakhstan. He's acting ambassador now in Macedonia, North Macedonia. So he's following his dream, and Evan, who loved cars, and I think, he liked the idea of real estate, and I think he and I get along great with my 3 kids, and I think he kind of thought, well, I think this is a good gig, maybe we'll father-son thing, and then he probably came to the notion, and I also told him, look, don't do what I'm doing. You should get a real education and know what you're doing. So he went off and he got his master's in real estate, worked for a bunch of other people, and really learned the real estate business, the right way, not the way I went about it.
So it was when he came back, it was as though he'd learned all the things you never knew, but you'd done really well with your gut and instinct and timing and passion. But maybe for the modern era, you need Evan's second skill set.
100% right.
Okay.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Because Evan has seen me, I'll still buy on gut instinct. And Evan will, make sure that I'm not being stupid.
Yeah.
And he's gone along with kind of, we've done projects together, and now he's on his own. He's doing his projects. And Evan also has a really keen eye, and he's got the nose for this. He's bought the right stuff, repurposed it, a lot like what I've done. I mean, the two of us are probably pretty similar in our approaches. I don't think he's more detailed than I am, but he's not like detail, dotting I's and crossing T's. But he's got a great, staff that works with him, and he does it the right way.
It's so
I've just
fulfilling too for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've just been really fortunate. I was born exactly at the right time when you could really start with nothing and end up with something.
Yeah.
Very hard to do that now, and now interest rates are even going up. So I just nailed it.
You did.
I mean, I was too young for Korea, too old for Vietnam.
God.
And so I there haven't been, and I hope it doesn't happen, there haven't been any like horrible depressions or serious civil unrest, that.
And Beverly Hills is its own island, isn't it? I was thinking that when I was waiting downstairs. I was, you drive in, the traffic's mad on the 405. I live in the valley. I came in, and you get on Sunset and you drive in, and the pavement changes when you get to the Beverly Hills sign. It's suddenly, my truck's bouncing around and suddenly goes smooth into Beverly Hills. And then you get here and you realize it is
very nice place.
It's like a little Monaco in the middle of.
Yeah. And growing up, growing up in L.A. and then in Hollywood, we've lived here now since 75. So it's
same house.
Same house since '82. So we've been in the same house for 40 years. But living here, it's a small community. There's only 30,000 people living in Beverly Hills. But in the daytime, it probably grows to 100 because of all the businesses. But the police and fire here are.
Who you know very well.
Yeah, I do.
Yes. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I think you should tell a story of when you got the Brumos car. Because didn't you go to a benefit that night and the chief of police or someone come up and say something about their cameras had picked up a car?
Yeah, it was kind of comical. They use drones here in Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills is state of the art.
Yeah.
If you're interested in doing crime, don't come to Beverly Hills because you will get caught.
Yeah.
And so they have drones, and so the car came in from Europe, and Evan and I greeted it and took it out of the the transporter, and we just had to go for a ride. Yeah. And the Brumos car has a big 59 on front and back and sides, And so we took the car out and did a couple of fast passes and brought it back. And that night or the next night, either that night or the next night, we were at the police, what they call black and white ball. And our city manager came up and said, Bruce, you probably, have you ever seen a car with number 59 on it? And I going, right, George, yeah. He said, we caught, this car was doing some pretty fast, laps around the flats, the residential area. And I'm going, And so, of course, we were caught. And I said, George Chavez is our city manager. I said, George, it's us,
Busted.
Busted. So anyways,
that made us all laugh when we heard that.
Yeah, and that's the truth. I mean, and we drive everything in here. I mean, for me, the drive is really cool. And we, they take the short wheelbase out regularly. We took the Testarossa out last week to.
Yeah, I know you did.
So my generation has to be the perfect time. Yeah. Because you can start literally with nothing. I mean, Evan came in here last year. He said, Dad, how did you end up with all this stuff? I said, Evan, I don't really know. I don't really, if somebody said, no, how could you ever afford a 4-cam in 1970? I'd have to think that. I don't know.
I imagine.
It was $10,000.
Which was a lot of money. But I imagine you if you had 9,900, you were going to find the 100.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd imagine you were going to make it work.
You know what? I didn't spend, I had friends that really, came from families, that were probably very, wealthy.
Yeah.
I did not. And because of that, I probably saved and didn't do stupid stuff, because, spring break would come along and they'd go to Newport Beach or Aspen or skiing or wherever they go, and I would just find that opportunity to work.
Yeah.
And to save my money. I guess I learned that from my dad. Just don't buy stupid stuff. I've never denied myself or my family anything that was needed, but I also didn't spend stupidly. I was talking to a friend of mine tonight, and we were talking about flying business class. And I flew coach pretty much my whole life,
Wow. Wow.
But there's friends of mine that, would fly first when they could feel they could afford it,
Wow. How important was having a woman in your life all the way through from 28 to now? Because I've read a lot about it. The Bells are not good at that, as you know. But to keep the same one, but and so many in the racing world weren't. Let's face it. But I've so many business management books or advice on when you read biographies about people that have made it. A common theme is either they're chaotic with women or they've had a strong woman in their life the whole way through.
Well, I wouldn't say that my wife is strong, but she's a good, loving, very loving mother.
Yeah.
And she is, very much, our kids have benefited by having one parent. It's not like, first of all, in this day, in my day and age, you got a divorce, half of everything went the other way.
We don't need to discuss that, Bruce. Thanks.
Okay. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Look, I've just come out in hives. Yeah.
So I've been fortunate. We've been married 53 years, and she'll also go on the back. If I said today we're gonna take a Harley to Sturgis, she'd say sure. She's been great. A great companion in that regard, and we have a lot of fun together. We still enjoy each other's company. As far as my work and my business, she's not been a part of it at any level. But she hasn't, said, well, how could you buy that, and why don't you do this? And she hasn't been bossy in that regard. So she's left me completely alone in my business world. She's been a great mother. Our kids are loving and great parents, I think more because of her. Because she's been that kind of a mother. So she's been a great partner.
Yeah, I think that's the key. A good partner lets you get on with looking after the kids is a massive thing. And there's such good humans in today. Like we were having a little chat before we started. Too many people aren't, because of bad parenting.
So. Bad parenting. And there's also, I think another thing that's kind of worked for me is that, my wife she came from very modest, upbringing. So it's not like she came with a dowry or a bunch of money or any money. I mean, it pretty much, from my efforts, and I help her family when needed, and that's kind of given me kind of the pride, and I'm happy to do it. So I mean, it's just a great balance. I've been fortunate in what I do, and she's been grateful and a great mother and great
way to be. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to think about the young Bruce Meyer. You're here in Hollywood. Hot Rod's happening. You've got Ed Pink. All this stuff's happening. It must have been wild. But how available was the sort of celebrity of the time? If you were into Porsches, so was James Dean. Steve McQueen. What was your first interaction with guys like that?
Well, Steve McQueen raced motorcycles, and I raced motorcycles, but he was in a different category. He was in the cool, with Bud Eakins, and they were, like expert up front cool guys, and I was just hammering it out in the back of the pack. So I came across, I knew who Steve was, and then just serendipitously, I bought his Porsche Speedster just from a car show in the Valley. It caught my eye. It was a black Rudge Wheel Speedster 58 Super, just checked every box. So the fellow had it for sale. It was $1,500. It was in in the late 60s. So I bought it, and I had it for 12, 13 years. And then he found out about it. And then there was a Porsche dealer in Hollywood, Bob Smith Porsche Audi, and that was kind of like where all the movie people and cool people hung out, and it just happened to be about half a mile from my apartment in Hollywood. Yeah. So he mentioned it to Steve, and he said, "Oh no, that car's long gone." And so Steve said, "Let me just see what this car is." So he called me, and he said, "I understand you're telling people you have my car, but I don't think it's my car. Can I just have a look at it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So we met out in Westwood. Of course, Raylene was with me on that.
I bet she was.
And anyway, so he looked at it, and it was his car, 100%. Still had his Gardner Reynolds, which is a racing recap on in the spare. It was the roll bar mount was still there. It was his car.
What do you remember about the meeting? Were you excited to go meet? I mean, he wasn't heading towards the biggest movie star in the world.
No, I didn't. Because in our store, I dealt with a lot of the movie. I've never been. Listen, there's good people and there's people that are full of themselves and not. Wealthy, poor, doesn't matter to me. I don't care if they own the trucking company or drive the truck. It doesn't matters not to me. So I was just going. I was more for Raylene to meet Steve, because she's a real movie buff.
Yeah.
And I guess I was curious, and so the meeting went really, really well. And then for probably 3 months after that, every week he called me. "Bruce, you don't know, this is the first car I ever bought new, and I raced it, and it's, Neely and I were together in it, and you got to sell it to me." And I thought, you know what? I said to Raylene, I think I'm going to just sell him the car because he really, really wants it, because I just didn't want him to buy it and then just go off it,
Yeah.
And so Raylene says, "Don't sell that car. You love that car so much." And I should have listened to her then, but I didn't. And I said, "I'm going to do it." So I sold it to him with the idea if he ever sold it, it would come back to me. Of course, he died, and now Chad has it.
Yeah.
And Chad's not doing great right at the moment. But I'm sure it'll go to their grandson. It'll be that'll
stay
be
in the family.
Stay in the family, which is great. And then about two or 3 years later, I found a twin. I mean, a identical twin to Steve's car, which I have here.
Yeah.
And I have it. It's just not Steve's, but it's just like his.
Just
like it.
And it's such a good story because you forget how we look back. It's like everything to do with this historic and collector car world is full of nostalgia, and it's driven by other people's memories, not many original first-hand memories.
Mm-hmm.
It's this is the provenance of the car. This is this is who owned it, and I heard that so and so owned it. But to hear, that was a moment, that was a transaction that actually really did happen.
Oh yeah, and Raylene took a picture. It was really cute because she took a picture of Steve and me when I was delivering the car, and
that's so.
And
So what about car culture in California at that time. We didn't have, obviously we had hot rodding. It was all about racing. It was all about more power. Drag racing was a big thing. When it came to, when you were not moving away from bikes, when the car thing was getting bigger for you, what about racing? Did racing?
So I did, when I got my Porsche, there was a club called the Porsche Owners Club, POC, and they did gymkhana. So I did that, pretty regularly.
Yeah.
I didn't do any track events. First of all, I was my store was open 6 days a week, so I was here 6 days a week. And the idea of spending a lot of money on vintage racing, I just didn't have that in the budget. So I didn't do a lot of racing. But
you led to Bonneville. I mean, how did that?
So when I was growing up, hot rods was aspirational for me to have a hot rod.
Yeah.
But it was not part of my upbringing or what.
Sorry.
Sure.
I just realized
That's okay.
bloody camera was in my shot of you. That's
good.
all right. That's good. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So I always wanted a hot rod.
Yeah.
And then, there were different kind of categories of car people. There were hot rodders was probably the kind of the bottom end. I don't want it to sound, elitist, but it was kind of hot rodders. And then there were Cobra guys. That was one step above a hot rod. And then there were, MG, and kind of like early sports cars guys with the early MGs. And then there was, Porsche guys, and there were Ferrari guys. I think that's kind of a broad, ladder. And so I just skipped. So I checked out of hot rodding and muscle cars. So it was hot rods, muscle cars, Cobra, probably MGs, Porsches, and then Ferraris. So when I went into Porsches, I just left hot rodding, but I always loved hot rodding. And so I had Porsches and the one Ferrari. I don't consider myself really a Ferrarista, but I'm probably more a Porsche-phile. But later on in like the late 70s, I ran into Jim Busby. And I'd known Jim for a very long time because he started in hot rodding.
Yeah.
And he drag raced Top Fuel. I mean, he was the real deal.
Yeah.
And he had a little 32 Ford Highboy, which just looked like Happy Days to me. And I remember, what I didn't realize at the time, Jim sells everything. Jim buys and sells. So I saw Jim. It was at it was an auction in Newport Beach. I said, "Oh my God, that's the cutest car!" And he was cruising in it. And I said, "If you ever sell that, let me know." One of those deals. That was like on a Saturday. On Monday morning, Jim calls, "Where do you want the car?" I'm going, "Which car?" "My hot rod." "You want it, right?" And I go, "Well, yeah, and it was $15,000. Yeah. I really didn't have a place for it. I really didn't want it right then. I wanted him to, just
down the road.
Me in Mao, down the road.
Yeah.
So anyways, he delivered the car on the Monday after. And I thought, God, I'm not sure I'm going to, well, anyways, I'll just try it out. And so I started driving it, and everybody gives you thumbs up. Yeah. And I started enjoying it, and I thought, this is really cool. It was a category that I missed younger. So this little Highboy that he had a very small Chevy and a 283, which was a very small Chevy with a Power Glide transmission. And it wasn't nasty enough. So there was a fellow up in Crestline named Bob Bowder who was a real badass, and he had a 32 that was built by a fellow named Barry Lobeck, and then Barry sold it to Steve Coonan, and Steve Coonan sold it to Bob Bowder, and then Bob Bowder just bought it to sell, and he sold it to me. And this is with a 383 stroker, 4-speed, I mean, wicked fast. And so I sold the Busby's Highboy to a friend of mine. I said, "If you sell it, it's got to come back to me." Well, he had it for a few years. It did come back to me, but then I started loving this whole hot rod thing. Yeah. Because it was so entertaining, and it was, these cars were fast, but not like supercar fast where you're going to hurt yourself. They were just fast. And so I kind of got into it, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to look in my old hot rod magazines and just, wonder what happened to some of these real famous cars. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I got into the vintage thing. Okay. So I had Pete Chaporis, who lived across the street from Bob Bowder, and I bought the Pearson Brothers coupe, and then the McGee car and Don Spencer's car and the belly tank and so forth, and all of which were restored by Pete Shaporis. And Pete was just the coolest guy. I said the coolest two guys I ever met. One was Pete Shaporis and the other was Don Prudhomme. Prudhomme is just he is rock cool.
And of course, he was into his ascendancy at that point, right? With the whole, with drag racing.
Yeah.
When we did his interview here, he just, the way he described how when drag racing went pro and suddenly there was money in it, that game changed.
Oh, no. When Prudhomme was racing, he didn't have time for anything else. Friendships, being nice to people, anything. He was just, he wasn't what he is today. And by the way, since I've gotten out of retail and I'm more relaxed, I'm not I used to be uber hyped. I mean, every minute counted. I had to make, every minute had to be productive.
Wow.
The idea of, taking the kids to the beach, not going to happen, So, because I was just super amped. And so both of us are different. We're a month apart in age, or a couple months. But so when I bought the Greer Black Prudhomme dragster, which is maybe the winningest dragster in the history ever of drag, or will always be the winningest car because it had such a ridiculously good record. I remember when I got that, I just couldn't wait to tell Prudhomme, who had no interest in it.
No, really?
Oh my God! And not only that, he wasn't very nice about it. He was like, "I'm working, just don't bother me, kid."
Oh, I heard that. Yeah, how funny. Go back to Bonneville. How did you end up going
so
fast at Bonneville? And kind of, was that part of the spirit of the adventure that you could get a car, buy a car, put one together, get your license, and go and drive at Bonneville?
Yeah. So Bonneville was like, for hot rodders, that's kind of the cool thing.
Yeah.
And so I had this friend of mine, Jack Rogers, who'd run Bonneville and El Mirage and just all over. And he says, "You got to come drive my car, And at Bonneville, I thought, I will. And so you have to get licensed. And you could be Parnelli Jones or Dan Gurney. Everybody has to get licensed. And so I got licensed, and I drove. He had a Camaro, and I drove it. I think I went 224 on that, which was plenty cool.
Yeah.
But at Bonneville, it's kind of like the rodeo. You got the barrel racers and the roping and that kind of stuff. But you go to see the bull riders, and the bull riders of Bonneville, the guys that drive the open roadsters. I thought that's really what I wanted. I want to go over 200 in a roadster. So Mike Cook, I found a car he had built for a guy who'd retired, and so the interesting thing about Bonneville is it's not like you get the latest and greatest new model. You just keep, repurposing the old ones.
Okay.
So I found a car that had run, was built a long time ago, and we just took it apart, completely took it apart. Went from a wet sump to a dry sump and different transmission, air shifting. We just started all over in the car, and that's the one I have here. And I just wanted to go over 200, and that was that was like an unbelievable ride for me.
I bet it was
unbelievable.
Was that the most nervous you've ever been in your life?
Well, it
when
was.
It happened?
It was interesting because I was talking. This last weekend were the Winter Nationals. Drag races.
Did you go?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, Mike Salinas. I don't know.
Yeah, I know that name.
Big time guy. And they're running, the over 300 and some miles an hour in like a little over 3 seconds. Whew. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but
well, no, I think it was just about driving that fast.
So when I was racing motorcycles, I never wanted to disappoint my parents, because they were so good to me and they so believed in me. To let me to stand by while I opened a candle shop. That took that's pretty cool because most parents would dominate and just say, "No, you're not opening a candle shop. You're going to get a real job or something." And so when I was racing motorcycles, I knew my parents didn't know I had motorcycles. I knew they would, if they knew I was racing motorcycles, that would just devastate them. So they never knew. And so all week long before the races, I go, I don't think I should be doing this. And then, of course, you get there, you unload the bike, you put the visor down, it's like game on. You don't even think about it. So with regard to the Roadster, I knew this, from my family. Maybe it wasn't the smartest thing I ever did because at Bonneville, and with any kind of racing, as long as nothing happens, everything's going to be just fine.
Totally.
But shit happens, and it sometimes is real bad. And I didn't want to just become, a mess for my family. So I thought maybe I shouldn't be doing this, as we're building the engine, 1,000 horsepower Chevy, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. But, that lasted until we got to Bonneville. I put the visor down, and then it's game on. And Bonneville is interesting because it's like a dirt surface. It's not like a paved road. You go 200 on pavement. The car moves a lot. And if you're not comfortable at speed, it's a real uncomfortable ride. And you go for 5 miles flat out, and it takes, it
takes balls.
And so I knew what I was thinking about. I was talking to Mike Salinas. I was talking to Tony Stewart. And I always thought when I pull the chutes on my car and you get that slowdown, it's like getting a hug from your mother. And I was saying to Tony the same thing. He said, well, when you're driving a dragster, the G-force going from 0 to 300 in 3 seconds, unbelievable. And then you got to stop this thing. So then you go from like maximum G-force coming to stopping. He said, and I never even thought about stopping because at Bonneville you got 3 miles to slow down. You pull the chutes and you have no front brakes. We got back brakes. It woes down real smooth and it's no problem. Although I remember the first time a friend of mine said, just when you do your turnout, just make sure and make sure you're going slow because you go from 200 down to 70. You think you're crawling, but you're
still moving. It must just be such a rush. I've got to go out there one day. I really want to go and see it. I really want to go out there.
Well, there's a few boxes to check. For me, Bonneville was one of them. Isle of Man TT. Have you been to that?
Which you went to, right?
I did. Oh my God, that was just unbelievable.
That is the Holy Grail.
It is. I've never been to a sporting event like that in my life that had such risk and speed. You don't have to. You would never be on it. You would never participate. That's not for. But these guys are bred for it. They're all from the same area. There's not like Italians and Germans and Swiss or Swedish. These guys are born in that area. They know every turn on that road.
And they die doing it.
Every year.
And some of the top ones. Guys that are the equivalent of a Tony Stewart in bikes die there.
That's right.
But the videos keep me watching. I don't think I've watched any other sport, any other event as much as I have on YouTube as I have the TT.
And it still doesn't do it justice.
Really?
You have to see it. To see, there's a gal, it was like Rosie's Corner or something, and this gal with bright dyed red hair, it was thanks to the Duke of Richmond.
Yeah.
I asked him, we want to go, but we want to go the right way and meet the right people. And so he gave me the name of a guy. Then I turned it over to Richard Varner, who's chairman of the Peterson. And Richard runs Moto America. He understands motorcycle racing, and he really it was Charlie Nierberg, myself, Nick Mason, Gordon McCall, Chip Connor. It was a great group, and the police chief drove us around in his van, and he took us to this Rosie's Corner. He said, this is where you want to watch the race. And it's one of these front lawns that are kind of elevated. There's a stone wall, and it's elevated. So you basically lay down, and you can hang your head over a little bit, and watch them coming and going. And you see maybe a mile, not a mile, maybe a half a mile. They come by you at about 200, and then they drop off down below. You don't even see where they go, but you can see they're still on the gas. And it's stone walls on both sides. There's no safer barrier. There's nothing. If something happens, you will die.
You will die, yeah.
And they go by at a speed that you just, I've got videos.
Still remember it.
Oh,
feel it.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
What an experience. God,
Yeah.
no, I got to do that.
So Bonneville isn't quite that risky.
No,
but it's still a rush.
I'd still one day go out there.
But you see, you've gone 200 in an automobile, and so
200.
I hadn't. I was starting from zero.
Yeah, but it's different when you're, I think, like at Le Mans, the first time you do the couple of laps on the Mulsanne, and you go, this is kind of the same road that trucks were on yesterday. So it does have that element. And once you get into it, the helmet's on, you under pressure, it's just a race. But
Were you at Le Mans before the kink? Before the
year it started, the two chicanes started in my first year.
your first year? Because I can't even imagine without those chicanes.
Have you ever watched In Car 956? The video. You should.
I think I
You
have.
must have a DVD or something.
Who was
It
driving?
was Dad in the Rothmans Porsche. It was
Yes.
all the championship races, and they had this massive bloody camera in there. And they do the Nürburgring, they do Silverstone, they do Le Mans. But you put them on as they go onto the Mulsanne, and it's a minute and a half of
Flat out.
flat out. I mean, wah. Dad said you tighten your belts, you look around, you check. I'm going, God, you're fucking nuts. I mean, that's wild.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Just
it's
can't even-
Incar 956. Anyone listening, it's like a must do. It's a classic. It really is. You mentioned the people. You do have this wonderful ability to collect people. I think they gravitate to you, which is a hallmark of your life, obviously. And our world of cars and bikes and collecting them obviously is your world so much, but it's got so many, when I say rich, not financially rich in texture people, right? Amazing human beings, men and women that most of them have been here, as your friends. Do you look on this journey through life that making friends at every level in your passion must be so rewarding, because you look so happy when you have everyone around. Everybody knows Bruce, but they all want to gravitate to you.
And you're very kind, Justin, because we've been great friends, and you've always been terrific to me, and I appreciate it. And I'm very honored to be here with you. I can tell you that.
You.
But that has been a big part of my life. I mean, that is the biggest part of my life. The cars are things. I'm the custodian for them, but it's the friendships. Having met your heroes.
Yeah.
Parnelli and Dan Gurney, and
Well, the last time I saw Dan was right with Alan DeCadney I've got photographs of it right here, where that bike is.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So just meeting these guys and Carol Shelby, and it's just really special. That's the most meaningful kind of collective. The cars are nice, but the great friendships are just eclipse that completely. It's just really meaningful to me, and it's not because I hear all this. It's just having met those guys and consider them friends, and your dad is always so kind to me. We sat next to each other at Amelia, and the Bell family are good people, and not full of themselves, because I would think with the accomplishments that you and your dad have done, I mean, you guys could be unreachable and just kind of, next level, but you're not. You're just always so kind to everybody, and your interviews are so easy and charming. And
thank you. I mean, I've got to say with Dad, it's like you feel about your dad. Your dad wasn't famous. My dad is, and I've never heard anyone say a bad thing about him, which is that I've never heard. Obviously, I've never spoke to someone who lost a building to you in a deal, but you know what I mean. I'm sure there are people out there, but in general, one of the things I'm most proud of is that everybody in a sport, when you race almost to the death sometimes, certainly risked it, no one's ever had a bad word to say, and it makes me, I'm prouder of that than anything really, because it was a tough sport. It really was. But on that note, we're at a point, unfortunately, in history, in your timeline, at 80 years old, 82, same as Dad, that there's less runway ahead than behind, and people are going. And look at Parnelli. I mean, I'm waiting every day. I think every moment, that might happen. And Dan, and that's just freaking sad, isn't it?
That is a real sad part about aging. And we just lost Bob Ingram, the Porsche guy, and he and I were super close. And so, I know, you don't know when it's going to come, but it is coming for everybody, by the way. And you can be young, and I've lost friends, young and old. So it's kind of, I know I'm on they say you can see the clubhouse. You're moving.
Yeah, but but it is also about mental approach and health. And I know you keep yourself super fit, which is part of it, and Dad does too. But that's what the stories, and I think like the get-togethers you have with everybody, and you bring everyone around. I think the more opportunity we have to bring every generation, Evan and mine, and then his kids and my son Oliver, and Tallulah, to help them understand that it was a very exciting time. I think you were born in the right time.
The best time. The best time. I don't see how today I could accomplish anything that I've done in today's world. Maybe you could meet people through Instagram or something like that, but it's not the same as having them by your garage and, hearing them talk about their achievements and, I've really given a lot of thought to, I wouldn't trade with a 50-year-old today with the way things are looking. I don't feel as I don't feel as good about their future as ours. Ours was just you had something to look forward to. I'm a little concerned, the way the world is going and the way our country's going. I'm
I think the
very patriotic person, and I'm very proud of my country, and
I think we're all in for a little rough ride.
I could be, and I just I guess you just have to think everything's going to be okay, and I hope it is because I've got 7 grandkids and 3 wonderful children. I just want them to when they're my age to have the same feeling that they've lived a good life and have great friends and accomplished something.
That's true. I remember I did talk to someone, an older guy, about a year ago, and I was like, God, what a different world. He was sitting in the doctors with me, and he was late 80s, and he went, well, let me tell you, he said, just in the mid 40s, not many of us thought the sun would ever shine again. He said,
in the UK.
In the UK,
God.
We thought the world there would never be happiness again, and so it does. The world is cyclical,
and that's what gives me hope, is that sometimes when things are the darkest, you just think it's just no way out. Things just happen, and you look. I mean, I look at what's happening in Ukraine, and I remember the bombings in the UK, and I mean, it's just, you just think it's over. But you know what? God's got a plan, and I guess, He, gives us something to look forward to, and we come out of it.
Yeah. And do you think humans are good, essentially?
That's going into a whole,
yeah.
I think, I think like growing up, if I knew there were no consequences, if I did something, if I compromised, it would have impacted me. Today the consequence, most of my family is Catholic, but I say I have my own religion, the religion of gratitude, and I thank God every day. But if I didn't think that there was somebody, whether it's the IRS or God or somebody, that could make my life not so good, maybe the human part of me would just take advantage of situations. Who knows? Maybe I wouldn't pay my taxes, or maybe I would take advantage of somebody. But I always felt like there are consequences for doing things right and consequences for doing things wrong, and I think consequences had a big part. I mean, I didn't want to disappoint my dad. I didn't want to get spanked either, and I didn't. Yeah. So I think consequences have a lot to do with keeping humans human and good.
That's a good way of saying it. Okay, before we go, you've got 7 grandkids. What is if you had to sum up your philosophy on life, the thing that you would want them to say, tell their kids about their granddad, what would your philosophy really be? Just your motto, morals, motto for life.
Well, my grandkids, are so young because we didn't get started with grandkids until late. So I just wanted to say their grandpa had a cool car collection.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to know my business philosophy or any philosophical thing, but they come over here and I'm Papa,
Yeah.
And they like the old cars. I would like them just to remember me as a happy person that, lived, a happy life, because it's, they won't know particularly what I started with or, but hopefully they'll look at pictures and whatever little remnants we leave behind and they'll think, that was probably a pretty cool guy.
Well, they can listen to this and find
That's
out.
right.
Bruce, you are a happy person. Thank you so much. You make everyone's life happier. So
well, thanks. And
really
and
nice.
it's as I said before, it's just a real privilege to know you, Justin, and you add a lot of happiness to wherever you are. And I love it when, you're emceeing or talking. You have such a great way of communicating. It's a real gift.
Thank you very much.
God bless.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Bruce.
That was
Well, thank you very much for listening or watching Life with Legends. I love doing it. And so don't forget to share the podcast to your friends if you did enjoy it. And thank you so much for your support. Also, remember, visit lifewithlegends.com to catch up on past episodes and check out what I think are some beautiful portraits I've taken of all my guests. Available for sale in limited edition prints. Anyway, guys, thanks so much. I look forward to you joining me again next week.